Major funding for this production is provided by American Bank of Lafayette, the financial choice of the 80s. Additional funding provided by the Friends of LPB.
I've got a weakness for quizzes that I'm the only guy with the answers to them, and I've got one for you. Get ready. There's only one father and son combination in the National Football League record book, just one. Can you name them? All right, I'll give you half the answer. Dub Jones, who scored 6 touchdowns in a single game. My guest is the other half of the answer. Son of Dub Jones, the very great quarterback, Burt Jones. And Bert's in the record book for having 17 consecutive completions against the New York Jets. And Bert, welcome home and welcome to Louisiana Legends.
Well, thank you very much. It's certainly a pleasure to be here.
Bert, you were born in Ruston, and pro football from inception was a part of your life.
It really was. My father, as you have mentioned, was a player. But more so than that, he retired at a very early age for me, in that I was only 4 years old. So I really didn't remember him very much as a player, but I do remember him because when I I guess about the 5th grade, he went into coaching, professional coaching, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns from that period until my senior year in high school. So I was very much involved with the game of professional football because during the summers I would go to training camp, and instead of going to summer camp like a lot of children do, I would go to a professional football team's training camp every year. And we would sit back, and the whole family would move in and just enjoy the sights.
Has it ever occurred to you, and I'm sure that it has, because you're a thoughtful, bright man, that you have lived most of our fantasies? For example, every Sunday, some Monday nights, there's millions and millions of Gus Weill sitting there. And for a few hours, we're not really Gus Weill. We're that guy, tell you who we usually are, we're that guy under the center passing the ball because he gets the publicity and the commercials and the salary, the adoration. How does it feel to live the rest of our fantasies?
Well, actually, when you talk about the rest of your fantasies, I've lived the rest of my fantasies. I mean, I had the same fantasies as you did. I mean, I wanted to be a professional football player. And I did it. I was fortunate to genetically be good enough to play and have the dedication and the willpower to, to press on and do it. But I didn't have the dreams of being on Monday night because there wasn't a Monday night when I was growing up. But I did dream of being a professional football quarterback. That's the only thing I thought about. And because of it, it probably put a lot of things in the wrong perspective for me. But that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I accomplished.
Now, unbeknownst, I'm sure, to a lot of our friends, not only was your father a great athlete, your grandfather was an All-American at Tulane in football, I believe, and baseball.
He was. My grandfather, that being my mother's father, was a very good player, very good athlete while he was going to dental school. He was ambidextrous, which is rather unusual. He would pitch one game of a doubleheader right-handed, pitch the second game left-handed, something that I haven't heard of very often, but he was a tailback on their championship teams back then, and he was a very, very good athlete and taught me a lot about the games of both baseball and football.
As a youngster, a sickness, a disease entered your life that could have well been the end of, certainly of athletics, because it was rickets, and you had to wear leg braces for a period of time. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. I'm not sure that they properly diagnosed it as rickets, but back then, orthopedic medicine wasn't as big as what it is now. I'm not saying that, or at least it wasn't in Ruston, because, I can never remember going to a doctor as a child except at that occasions, but I did. My legs were crooked, and I had to wear what we call night splints for a couple of years and to straighten them out. And all it, I guess you can say the worst thing about it is I was very pigeon-toed and knock-kneed and had big bones, and they were too big at that time.
Do you know the other great former NFL football player who suffered from the same disease? When I give the name his and your name, folks might go out and try and catch the sickness. O.J. Simpson, who jumps over cars and so on.
Oh, I know it. Well, O.J. is a tremendous player, and probably something you didn't know. O.J. is from Louisiana.
I did not know that.
Yes, he was born right out of Shreveport, if I'm not incorrect, and lived the first few years of his life there until they moved to Southern California. So maybe it was going through North Louisiana at the time, because we are just about the same age.
Bert, what is it? Is it the drinking water that produces so many quarterbacks from where you come from? You, Terry Bradshaw, Ferguson,
Doug Williams.
My goodness.
Matthew Reed, James Harris, Bobby Lane now.
What's doing it? What did it?
Oh, I think that it's just circumstantial. There are a lot of good athletes that come from that area. Of course, Grambling has had years and years of tremendous athletes coming out of North Louisiana, Louisiana Tech, LSU. All of them have seemed to always pull players out of North Louisiana. Just something about the old Highway 80 that ran through North Louisiana between Atlanta and Dallas, that the people they dropped off there were either real tough farmers or tough lumbermen or something, but genetically it was very successful for football.
Bert, you had a brilliant passing arm, of course, and you determined to attend LSU. The coach at that time was Charlie McClendon, who I think his fans and admirers, and he has many, would acknowledge that he was not particularly noted for offense or for the passing game. In retrospect, you got to LSU, and what was probably the greatest talent of its time was platooned and played half of the time, and the rest of the time did not play. In retrospect, would you have been better off going someplace like Notre Dame, where there was a passing game?
Well, a lot of people have asked me that, but I really don't think so, because one thing, I'm from Louisiana. I was born in Louisiana, and I was raised in Louisiana, and I'm going to live in Louisiana. I think that my talents could have been utilized better at LSU, and I've always said this, and I've always felt this. And just like any competitive player, wanted to play all the time. I disagreed with the system that I was in, but yet I wouldn't want it. Had I had it to do all over again, if I were coming out of high school now, I would still do the same thing.
That's interesting.
If the situation were the same, because I love Louisiana, and that's where Louisiana's my home, and I'm going to make it my home. And had I left, like I almost did when I was in college, because I had considered it. I mean, I came through, and then I saw that it wasn't necessarily what was in store for me. I had an opportunity after my sophomore year to transfer, and actually had pretty much done everything to do that through the thought process and finding the place to go that I felt would be right for my skills. But then I sat back, and a good friend of mine then and a friend of mine now, Dr. Marty Broussard, he said, look, he said, let's think about this, Bert. He said, I've known your father. He said, I've known your uncle who played here at LSU, and I know how you are. I said, you're going to live here because I just know you're kind. I said, you're right. I'm not planning on leaving. He said, you're bigger than this. In other words, he said, and I believe it. And I said, I can overcome this. It's not something that is going to hold you back, because you're going to be better, and you're going to move on, and you're going to play pro ball, and your fame, so to speak, and your accomplishments on the field probably will be very well recognized as a pro. He said, but this is your home. Don't turn your back on it. And when you sat down and thought about it, that is correct. And that's really what I felt, and I felt like that I could overcome this issue, that I would be able to play as much as I needed to. And looking back on it, I played a great deal and had a great career at LSU and enjoyed every minute of it. But I would have loved to play more, and I would have loved to throw more. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have done the same thing.
I think that 100% of the Tiger fans, folks like me who graduated from there, disagree with you 100% and think that you should have played all of the time, but that's the past, and I think you handled it very well. You broke every record at LSU. perhaps your greatest game was with Ole Miss in 1972 in what many Tiger fans call the play of the decade. Now, you've had so many plays of the decade. Are you aware of what I'm talking about?
Well, I feel like you're probably speaking of the time that I threw a touchdown to Brad Davis.
Tied 16-16. The clock
tied 16-16.
Yes. And the clock had already run out, hadn't it?
Well, it probably should have.
Have.
We still had a couple of seconds. I mean, I probably was, you know, everybody said that I didn't have a quick release, but after thinking that I'd run 3 plays in 8 seconds or whatever the time lapse took place, I obviously had a very quick release at that stage in my career because we got so many plays off. But it was a big play, and it was a big catch by Brad Davis, and it was a big win because
tied the ball game.
Tied the ball game.
16.
The extra point went ahead to win it. But more so than that was just the fact that we had to go down. And I mean, we marched right at 80 yards to go down. No time. I mean, this was it. There wasn't anything left as far as time on the clock, and this was the only chance we had. And we were fortunate, and it took a lot of men to do that, not just me. But there were a lot of players on the field that gave it their everything to do.
Rusty Jackson kicked the extra point for the win on 17-16.
He did.
Let me ask you this. What is the sensation of being a quarterback, particularly in the pros, when the clock is ticking, time is now of the essence, people are screaming, there's 11 men opposite you who would like to physically do you harm? What is the sensation? Can you share that with us? Who'll never know it.
Well, to those of us that have been in it or in it now, it's the norm. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a little bit different saying, but that's what we play the game for.
Is it like going to work for the rest of us?
It is, but it's a different kind of work because, you know, really what I was doing is playing a kid's game, a game that I enjoyed, a game that I wanted to play all my life and getting paid to do it. So it was a lot of fun, yet it was a job and it was work. And it was hard work because I spent many, many hours at doing it. I mean, the days and the nights that I spent doing film work, the hours practicing, you know, it was a lot of work. But the feeling when you're out there, and I'll be honest, I've played in a lot of places and seen a lot of crowds, but being in Baton Rouge and seeing the crowd at LSU, there's no place like that place.
When does a young quarterback in the pros know that he's really running the team and he's been accepted by his teammates? That can't be an automatic thing by virtue of being the quarterback.
No, I don't think it is. You know, every situation is different, but leadership comes through leading. And, you know, they say this kid is a good leader. Well, he's a good leader because he does the right things. I feel like that being a leader, you know, you can't please all the people all the time. And you can't necessarily be the most well-liked person there is. But what you have to do, if you're planning on leading and doing the job, is do your job and do it real well and expect people to follow you.
Now, in 1973, you graduate from LSU. You're the second player drafted by the NFL. And you go to Baltimore. And my goodness, what a place to go play quarterback on Johnny Unitas, which is who certainly symbolizes the professional athlete and the professional quarterback. Did you get to know him?
Oh, yeah, I know John very well. And John's a friend, and what a tremendous player he was. And maybe someday they will regard me as being a good player, as everyone does him. But a lot of people thought it was kind of a tough hardship, but really I didn't think it was. A lot of people tried to compare the two, but, you know, to the people on the end, so to speak, or the players, we know that you can't compare players with players in different periods of times, just like I know that realistically there shouldn't be a comparison made between my father and I. My father was a tremendous football player and a great coach in the period of time that he played and coached. And everything's relative. That was then. I played now, and I'm through now, just like Jeff Wickersham shouldn't be compared to me at LSU because he's playing now, nor should Alan Risher. He played last year, and they were good and are good now. And it's a different period of time. The game has changed, and everything is a little bit changed. So
you brought up the name Wickersham, the LSU quarterback, sophomore quarterback. How do you assess his potential?
Oh, I think he's going to be, or already is, a very good quarterback, and I think he can only get better. He has the motor skills, so to speak, to be as talented as anyone I've seen at his level. I think he has a confidence on the football field that it takes to be a good player. confidence, cocky, call it whatever you want, but it's that sense that says, I can do the job, and y'all sit back and watch.
When you're attending, for example, an LSU practice, is there ever a ferocious frustration to go grab the ball and say, son, here's how to do it?
No.
No?
Not really. I guess I've got this from just the parental guidance that I've had. I mean, my father probably was the best innovative offensive mind going when he was coaching. And never did he come to LSU and say, hey, these are the things that you should do. He just sat back and watched and said, enjoy it.
In 1976, Burt Jones, that was the year in the career of Burt Jones, I'd say the professional year. You were voted not only the most valuable player in the NFL, but the top offensive player in the NFL. And to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, of the quality of Burt Jones' football, he beat out two pretty good men that year for NFL Player of the Year. One, Jack Lambert, and one, Kenny Stabler. So to be named in that company as the best, that had to be some.
Oh, yeah. Football is a game of circumstances, as you well know. Things have to fall your way to receive awards and arts and these things. And I was fortunate that year. We were on a roll. We had a good team. I probably had seasons that were better than that one. 75 was a better season for me, I think, number-wise than 76, as was 77 and 79. But everything came together that year. In other words, we as a team played well. We went into the playoffs. We came from way behind, and we were a domineering factor. And when these things happen, you know, some things fall your way.
You led the Colts to 3 AFC titles, which was no small accomplishment. Then Baltimore fascinates me. As a writer, it fascinates me because it occurs to me that the best happened to you there and the worst. It was both ends of the spectrum. And in 1982, something happened in Baltimore, and one very knowledgeable person said you became Baltimore's designated scapegoat, which is a brand new position.
Well, it really is. And I guess in a way it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, because when things go bad and things aren't doing well, they look for someone to blame it on. And actually, number-wise, or percentage passes thrown, completed, touchdowns, this and that, I probably had my best numbers in those 2 years where they started saying this is the reason. But they didn't have anyone else because the owner had traded away all the players that we had had, and I really was the only person left that people recognized as a name on the field, and they have to put it somewhere, and I happened to be the one.
Was that unbearable pressure on you? I'm talking about on you and your family, your loved ones.
Well, I don't think it was something that we enjoyed. You know, you just have to look at it in a realistic attitude, in the sense that this is not right. The people that know it's not right. The people that really count are the peers in your industry, and that being football, knew that it was really a farce. And so these are the things, but still publicly perceived, you know, you're the one that's making this happen bad, and that's bad. But we just took the attitude that most people didn't know what they were talking about except the people that were in the game, and that's unfortunately almost the truth sometimes.
How'd you feel when you were drafted then, when they traded with the Rams for you? Was that good to get out of Baltimore?
Oh, I was really looking forward to it.
What's Miss Frontieri like, Georgia Frontieri?
I like Georgia.
Who owns the team?
I think she's an excellent owner. A lot of people might think I'm crazy for saying that, but I think these are the people, once again, that really don't know, because I don't think she proclaims to be the most knowledgeable owner about the business. Not that there are very many. But her ideals and her intentions are picturesque when it comes to things she wants to do for the ball club. She wants to give them the best practice environment. She wants to give them the best football players, and she wants to give them just anything that she can to help enable her team to win. I think her shortcoming, probably, if there is anything, is she does have the materialistic instincts that, and this is kind of like her baby, and consequently it makes her a little bit short-sighted or far-sighted, and she can't see things in the proper perspective. And a lot of times that has to do in dealing with the people that are actually running the organization themselves. I think these are the places that they probably were a little bit short.
Bert, what is the sensation to be the best in your profession, recognized certainly as among the greats, and one day to have some guy tell you, son, I think it'd be best if you did not do this thing that you do so well again. What can you share that with us?
Well, it was tough, but I've always been a realist, and I always knew that it was going to end sometime. It ended prematurely for me, but I knew that it was going to happen because I was raised in this environment. I kind of was brought along after we realized the severity of the injury that I did receive last year, and so it wasn't as big a shock as what it possibly could have been had they
You thought
not
it was
said
coming.
anything.
You saw it coming.
Well, I felt it coming because anytime they'd say, hey, look, you broke your neck, now we're going to have to do an anterior fusion where we fuse two vertebrae together in your neck because you've fragmented the disc, and that's going to cut one joint out of your neck and limit a little bit of your mobility and weaken the joint above and below. These factors being present and known to me, they kind of had the indicator that this might be it. And, there is life after football. Yes. I mean, that's the reason I came to LSU. That's the reason I stayed at LSU. That's the reason I've always maintained a home in Ruston, Louisiana, is that I knew that it was going to end. And when it did, I wanted to have a place to be. And that's, has been my flow throughout. And my intentions for the whole period of time is to come back, live a normal life. I'm in the lumber business in North Louisiana. And for me, there is life after football. And when they gave me the option of, where they really didn't give me the option of playing, but when they told me that if you played and you hit the ground, there's a possibility that you may not walk, there is no question about what you're going to do. And it is a big decision, and it's something that you love. But once again, you just have to turn and walk away and say, I've got 40 more years to enjoy life and enjoy my family and be the provider. And so let's go. Let's see life after football.
Will fellow Louisianian and great quarterback Terry Bradshaw, will he play a game?
I certainly hope that he will. I've spoken with him a couple of times, and he does have a severe injury. We don't need to pretend that he doesn't have a problem. I mean, he's had an operation on his throwing arm, and this is critical. But Terry, as well as myself, not necessarily bringing me in his category, because Terry is as fine a player as has been in the league and has represented our state very well, I would say. But he has got a real problem, and I think he'll overcome it because he's overcome separated shoulders, broken ribs, hurt knees, just like the rest of us in the game. I mean, this is one part of the business that we have to overcome, is the fact that everyone gets injured a little bit, and it's just whether or not you can keep from letting the big one happen to you.
How do you assess Archie Manning as a professional quarterback?
I think Archie has always been a tremendous player. I think Archie, and I can sympathize with him a great deal because I spent a lot of my years being with not what we would say is the best football team in the world. And it's really unfortunate because Archie Manning has had as fine a mind as there is in the game, has had as fine a motor skills as there are possessed to play, but he's never had a team. And really, he never had a coach. Not to say the coaches that he had were bad, it's just the coaches that he had were never there long enough to establish their good, so to speak. And it really was unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate for the Saints, and I think it was unfortunate mostly for Archie Manning because what a tremendous player and what a tremendous talent and a great guy. And it looks like he isn't going to have the fruits that I might have enjoyed through the years just from the fact that he's a tremendous player with not such a good team.
Bert, we've got about 3 minutes. What about big-time athletics and narcotics, which is certainly become an issue? One must discuss it when you discuss athletics.
I think so. I think it's a problem. I think it's probably not of the magnitude that people seem to think that it is, but it's there. And I think one of the issues is that in our society today, we haven't been able to police the narcotics. We haven't been able to police the drugs out of our society. And so it's bad that it's in the National Football League, but let's draw that into proper perspective. All it is a conglomerate of people around the country brought together on one team. Then all of a sudden 45 people from different places all over the world becomes a team. So, you know, it's not indigenous to the NFL alone, it's everywhere. I think it's a little more prevalent there than what it is in normal society because, one, the people are probably a little more affluent than the normal age bracket that they're in the rest of society. So it is there a little bit more. And I think that it needs to be looked at harder, and there's something has to be done about it. And I think they're taking these provisions and the steps to try to police it as well as they can.
Did you see some players who you felt very badly about, who you felt were misusing a talent? And
well, I think that any excessive use, or any use, you know, not necessarily excessive, I've just, you know, I guess for the people that are in and the people that are out, it's not as prevalent and prominent and noticeable as what you may seem. I mean, let's go to Capitol Hill and point out the ones that are doing it there. I don't know. You don't know, but it's there. So I think that you can see it in certain people, and I think it's shown in their performance. And I think it's bad, and I think it's shortened a lot of lives of a lot of good players. And it's unfortunate because the business we're in is a kid's game that you get paid for, and it's too good to give up.
Bert, I want to thank you for coming from Ruston to talk with your fellow Louisianians. I know of no period in your career when you haven't been into the spotlight and when you haven't made all of us awfully proud to say that we're fellow Louisianians. And best of luck in life after football, but having spent a few moments with you, no problem. Burt Jones can handle that butt like he can handle a football.
Well, I appreciate it, and I certainly have enjoyed being here.
Okay, Bert.
Major funding for this production is provided by American Bank of Lafayette, the financial choice of the 80s. Additional funding provided by the Friends of LPB.